So many of us know the power of attending and even hosting live events. But do you know the secret to putting people into a room and creating the magic of a live event? Well, today I've got someone special in store to help us with a little bit of the behind the scenes secrets to what it takes to really fill your events. Hi, I'm Melanie Benson here, and I'm a business optimizer and profit strategist for entrepreneurs and small business owners who are up to big things in the world. And this is the Power Up podcast, where each week I invite a really amazing entrepreneur, someone who's doing some cool stuff in the world, or maybe even my own tip to help you learn how to power your business up from the inside out. So today, let me introduce you to a real dear friend of mine, Tiffany Peterson. Now, Tiffany Peterson is magical at helping entrepreneurs overcome their limiting beliefs and behaviors to create a sustainable, thriving business. And you can find her at tiffanyspeaks.com. Now, on a personal note, I've been getting to know Tiffany over the last, I would say a couple years, maybe almost 3 years now, through another group that we're in. And I just, anytime I get to spend time with her, it's almost like I feel inspired. She just brings so much grace and power into any space that she's in. And I watched her business really take off and just, it's just booming. And she was doing live events. And I thought there's something magical that she's connected to, and we got to talk about it. So thanks, Tiffany, for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, love. It's so good to be with you.
I know. So we've got the wavy hair club here today, right?
Oh, we just got it done. So.
Yes, it looks beautiful. So, we're talking about the magic behind filling live events, and I really am curious for you, what was the inspiration for you to start holding live events? Because I know, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of confidence to start having events. Either that or we're just completely insane and we're like, I'm just doing it, right?
Yeah.
But
I always wonder that every year. Now presently I host a 3-day event every fall in September called Elevation, and it's a massive, big production, and it's incredible. But that's, of course, not where I started, right?
Right.
Sometimes, trust me, after in the middle, it's like giving birth to this big baby every year. It's like, oh, what are we doing? But I think many of you can relate that you have a message or you have a product, right, or a service. Anyone listening in on your podcast, at some level, we're all in sales, right? Life is sales. And I like to just simply say sales are relationships. And so a live event is a great way to model your product or service, especially when you're service-based, right? You could be a professional organizer. You could be an image stylist. You could be similar to you and I in the work we're about, Mel, where we're like, hey, we want to coach and help people with their businesses. And so a live event is great for a few reasons. One, it's a way people sample you and your expertise. And if you sell other coaching programs or products or into a higher next level retreat or event, it's a great way for people to experience you. Live events can also be great for cash infusion to your business, right? It can be another revenue stream when it's done well and done right. And so, but often the question or the challenge is I want to host a live event, or I'm hosting live events, but I'm not getting the attendance that I want, right? I mean, it's like, well, I posted it on Facebook one whole time. Why don't
I did some images and I did a Facebook event.
It's a live event. Why is that not happening? And it could be easy to be discouraged. So whether you're the network marketer who's wanting to have 8 people show up at your home for a home-based, class to share your product that way, or similar, you're wanting a full platform where 300 to 400 or 500 people show up, and you run a full live, several day, multi-day event, whether you're going to do 2 hours or, 25 hours, there's some dynamics that through a lot of trial and error and then some study I've learned a couple of key things that I think influence how to fill a room.
Great. I'm all ears.
Yeah. If you want me to just dive in, I'm happy.
Well, I think, first of all, we should talk about why you want to have a live event. You covered a couple of them. And, in network marketing, it's really common to have people come to your home or into some space together to educate on their product. But if you're on the service-based side, we see people all the time hosting these big events, you included. You're filling it with 200, 500, sometimes even 2,000 people in a room. And, there's a couple of different reasons why we do that, right? Like one is that obviously you're creating a captive audience, and you're creating an experience that hopefully makes people want to go further into working with you. Like, you might be introducing a bigger product or offering. But sometimes it's also a revenue strategy. And I guess let's talk first about, how do you decide which way you're building your live events, right?
Right. So I think that's a great question. Like anything in life, in business or a goal, is what's my intent, right? What's the outcome that I want to happen? And for me, and it can also be multi-purpose, is one, I love to do it. For me, every year my live event is like this big party, personal development party, as I like to say, right? And so the energy and the excitement and the connecting and so forth, I love it for that reason. And it's also great where I get to share what I privately coach at a fraction of the cost in a general public workshop setting, right? So it's making my service available to the masses if they choose to attend. And then 3, it is absolutely what fills half of my annual income comes out of a 3-day event. So you're like, oh, that's nice to make that much money in a weekend. However, it's like an 8-month process for that level of an event. So let me just bring it back down. Is my very first event was 6 years ago this month, which is kind of a fun thing to talk about today. And my first event, Mel, I was so scared, and I booked that little contract at a hotel, and that contract was so little compared to what I do now, right? But at the time, everything's relevant, right? And I signed that little thing and put my little flag out there and posted some Facebook. I didn't have an email list at this point. I did a lot of FaceTime, face-person networking, right? And some social media networking. But no matter what any of you sell, you're all in the people business. And it's really important that at the heart of your marketing funnel for anything you do, whether you're filling a webinar or you're wanting to sell product or you're wanting to sell or fill a live event, is you keep that be the heartbeat of your business, is you are in the people business and you are here to serve. Like, I never take for granted, like, even when my events where they have graduated to, like, oh, cool, lucky them, is no, it is a humbled opportunity of like, hey, I get to serve these people. I'm in business to serve. I'm in business. My coaching is speaking your product. Like, you're a service provider or a solutions provider, as I like to say that. So I think it's really being clear of the heartbeat of your why, your intention. And mine is really kind of threefold. It's a lot of fun. It's an experience where the masses can get the coaching I do privately, but at a fraction of the cost. And it does absolutely fill my highest tier program every year for a year of coaching that then again is more than about half my annual income. So that's a decent amount, right, of effort. But again, where I started 6 years ago today, my very first little event was that I had 37 people come. And 30 of those people, Mel, were family and friends, bless their hearts. They were just trying to champion me and cheer me on. I didn't have a marketing funnel. I didn't even have a website up when I hosted my first event. I didn't have, all of this stuff. So, you got to learn it for the process. But the important thing I do believe is to start, because if you wait to get ready, it will never come. I wouldn't be where I am today 6 years later. So when people say overnight success, I'm like, wow, where'd you come from? Your business. Well, that was a really long night if it was overnight, right? Is years of hosting I started, you can start with a half day or a 1-day workshop, right? Or a 2-hour webinar, and you just start sharing your message. And then it's, again, a process that gets cultivated. But at the heartbeat of filling my own events is it's heavily relationship oriented. And I'm happy to elaborate. There's probably, I'd say, 4 or 5 key spokes that feed into how I nurture those relationships online and in person that fill a live event now.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's where the mystery sometimes for a lot of people kicks in, is how do I do this? And I do want to come back to something you said, though, before we move on, and that is, this wasn't like, okay, I'm going to have my first event and you've got 500 people in a room. And I think a lot of people have these illusions about what it's going to take to put on these events. And then they're disappointed when they don't have a big room like many of the people they watch online. This is a process of consistent, repetitive action of continuing to get better and better at something, and being willing to start wherever you are and then let it grow and evolve. So I'm glad you brought that up. I know I faced some of that challenge myself, where I'm like, but I want this big event, and you have to start wherever you are. So let's talk about the spokes. Yeah, go ahead.
Check in because my heart says to share this is that, whether you call it God or spirit, the universe is, I like to say, and even my event t-shirts, we now have t-shirts at the event, right? But I didn't have that in the first few years, but we have a t-shirt and a phrase that says, God is my CEO. And I like to also say, God is my CMO, my chief marketing officer, is at some level, you put the stake in the ground and you say, I want to host this event with clear intention to be a blessing to others, to help them with their self-confidence, to help them with their organization, to help them with their business. And then in partnership with God or the universe of just saying, guide me to who I need to meet or guide the people that need to be there. And at some level, you trust that whoever needs to be in the room is in the room. If you'll do your part, so if your heart says, yes, I have a message to share, then your part is to simply host the event. And yes, do the marketing spokes, but at some level on the spiritual or the inner work is also leaning into trust that if you do your part, the right people show up. And if you'll consistently do it, it's just a matter of time before the results magnify.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's the difference between being unattached to the results, knowing that you've done everything you can to serve and really, create the right action, and doing nothing but just praying and meditating and hoping it all works out right. It's a big distinction. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so what were we talking about? I think we were talking about the spokes. Yes, we were going to go into the spokes.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Number one is thinking about always in a way that all year round, right? Whether, different authors I've heard say this phrase, ABC. And in the sales world, that used to be always be closing, right? If you ever saw the terrible and an amazing movie all at the same time, Glengarry Glen Ross, right?
Yes.
It's changed today of always be campaigning, right? And I like to say a little different of nourishing your network is always be nourishing your relationships. You're nourishing online, you're nourishing in person, right? So it's thinking about how well am I nourishing my relationships? If people today, like my brand isn't anywhere near, say, Tony Robbins, right? And Tony Robbins doesn't have to personally know a lot of the people coming to his event. But what he has built over the years is a name and a relationship, and he has books and he has email marketing and social media marketing where people have multiple touches. It's on average, this is really important information to capture. And there's a full video on my YouTube channel called the Four Laws of Interactions that talks about that on average, 60% of all sales take place after a fourth interaction. So consider that the first time you ask someone to come to your event, if that's their real first exposure to you, you can't be disappointed. It's that you're in the relationship business, and we know that people buy from those they know, like, and trust. And so you have to see that they're going through a campaign, right? They're going through regularly being nourished. They're getting multiple touches with you. They're watching your podcast. They're listening to you on your YouTube video. They follow your social media. They get your email and newsletter. They maybe see you at a networking event, right? Like you and I had multiple interactions before you felt confident and comfortable to then say, hey, I'd like to have you on my podcast. It's the same dynamic. It's the same thing in dating, right? Most of us don't meet someone on our very first coffee date and decide to meet parents and get married in that same exact moment. Not usually, right? I'm not saying it can't happen. It's just not. The norm is relationships are progressionary. Mm-hmm. So be thinking about, so it's a combination of, are you actively going to networking events? And that you show up to those events to serve. One of the most important things that we can do in any relationship is to ask more questions and to listen. That's the heartbeat of being great in sales and being truly great in relationships, period, right? I mean, that isn't new information. It's just reminding ourselves and taking some of the fear out of this conversation of, oh yeah, basic human things, but you get intentional. So how many people are you going to go to coffee with on a weekly or monthly basis? Or networking events. And when you're there, connecting with people and asking more questions to go deeper. So you're doing the in-person work, right? Follow-up things like handwritten notes and, remembering people's birthdays and so forth is a variety of things that you can do that you're regularly, again, you're in the business of nourishing relationships. So I don't host Elevation every September and go, oh, it's August 27th. We might want to try to put the event together. Is all year round, just part of my culture is we're doing different things. Now let's also talk about, some online things you can be doing is adding value. For instance, social media, blogging is good ways of how are you producing and sharing content. Even if you're product based, you need to be sharing content about your product or the lifestyle your product creates. So I coach a lot in network marketing and they're very heavily product based, right? and oftentimes health products. But we have them post, images and memes and blogs and tips too around health and well-being, not just here's my product, here's my product, here's my product, right?
Right.
So looking at, are you sharing what kind of content and deciding social media? There's a lot. You can do YouTube videos, podcasting, right? Blogging. Is sharing good content so people can sample you. That's really important to filling an event is how can people sample me? So something I do every year, I host 2 telesummits, one in August called the Sales Summit Series, absolutely intentional in August because it is the month about 6 weeks out before my big event. And it is the closer push that where people come live or live stream, that they get 4 weeks of 4 of my 8 sales training modules for complete free. And this is the thing about sampling. It has to be legit good content and value. Don't sample, breadcrumbs to people because that you become known so easily for who you are and what you're about.
Right.
So it's just sampling. That's a free series, right? So people, it's like Costco. You ever been into Costco and you go to Costco for milk and you leave with like $300 worth of stuff? Maybe just me, but here I have a philosophy. Costco is also like a casino because there's no windows and there's one opening, just like when you go to a casino.
And no clocks.
You can't get out of here. But it's the same thing that every day of the week you go to Costco or a Sam's Club, they have people sampling products all the day long. Why? Because it's effective. Sample, purchase, sample, purchase, sample, purchase. So ask yourself, how can people sample my work? And the great thing about being an entrepreneur today is all the free platforms. I don't pay my YouTube channel. I don't pay Facebook, thankfully, or Twitter or Instagram, right? I don't even have to pay for my iTunes. I do pay a small fee to host my podcast through an account called Libsyn, but it's like $15 a month, right? It's very cost effective. You have many ways where people can get exposed to you and be sampled, but telesummits, webinars, hosting free ways that, again, people can sample what the event will be about, right? Let's say you sample on goals, or you sample on sales, or you sample on personal confidence or branding or whatever your message is, or even product, is you could sample that out in some format where people, again, it's what we call a low risk barrier, is they have nothing invested, or low risk, right, would be a sampling small event that I'll share in just a moment that helps feed into that. So there's a lot of ways, is how do I up my game social media, or maybe I launch a YouTube channel or launch a podcast, or maybe I'm going to host a free webinar once a month, right? Or twice a year. That's what I do with my different topics that help grow my email list, right? Newsletters, another way. But I think that's the general idea. But the core there, whatever way you're going to take this, is how do people sample me?
Yeah, I love that idea of sampling because it does reduce the barrier. Somebody knows, I like this person, I like what they're about. How do I get more, right? Or how can I go to the next level with them? So, and again, I want to come back to something you said earlier, which is it's all about timing. It may or may not be that they like you and trust you and want to go deeper. Sometimes it's just simply what else is going on in their life, and whether or not this can be something they do now. And I think that's another reason to just remember you're going to keep going. Somebody may want to come this year, but they can't, so they'll go to the next one that as soon as you announce it.
Right. And the other thing that's another revenue stream and an option to consider with a live event, and again, you have to look at the cost, per exchange of what that's worth. But in the last couple of years, been offering live stream where people can tune in on their computer, and we even offer, because again, I'm with you, sometimes they have a conflicting date, someone's getting married, someone's graduating, they're at another live event or something that's up, it's just not good timing, is that for themselves that they can also join in live stream, or you record that so the recording they can watch when they want to is another way you can add on as a revenue stream to your event. One other thing I just started doing in the last 2 years is that I do like a mini sample event in different cities. Now, again, that's a much more extensive strategy that I didn't do in the beginning. And a lot of that comes from the aspect of I now have well-nourished cities with clients that I can fill an event, and I usually tack it on. Like this year, as an example, I'll be in Dallas in April and Phoenix and Dallas in May for different companies who've booked me to speak. So I'm already on someone else's paying me to come in and do content training, right? A keynote. I'm going to add an extra day and put in my own 2-hour free sampling event on, say, a Thursday night, keynote on Friday, and do that for my own business to fill that funnel. But then they get 2 hours and it's a small ticket event. So I don't go in the hole. I cover my costs, but it might be anywhere from $30 to, $100. You could do a sampling event, but then you sell tickets at that time.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. And again, it's not maybe the thing you do out of the gate unless you've got enough bandwidth to do it, but it's really effective. You know what I'm wondering? There's so many things somebody could do, right?
Yeah.
If there was one thing that if you want to host a live event and maybe you're newer at this or and you're just getting started in live events or this is your very first event, if there's one thing someone should do, what would that be?
Well, I think the aspect of it is, again, because we're having a major storm here in Utah, by the way. So,
so if we lose you, we know it's not personal.
Right. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, we've got some kind of storm. It's like all sultry. But the one thing truly at the heart is some manifestation of how are you going to nourish your relationships? Matched with the second question, how can people sample me? Mm-hmm. And so whether you host, like an example of this really truly is that my professional organizer, I went to a free 2-hour sample training of hers at a library. It was free, right? Low risk barrier. And I went in January. Well, by the following October, I had booked her to come in, and that was worth, for her to do a whole remodel on some of my space, several $1,000s for her. And then I met her along the way, again, like the 4 touches, there was some nourishing that happened. And so it's thinking about how can people sample me? It might be blogging, right? Or you up your real content creation with social media. Or you look at, I'm going to go actively network and nourish relationships and invite those people. I also think it's wise to nourish relationships with people that are influencers. And then you can make an offer, right? The other thing that I want to touch on briefly to tuck in here is how to make your offer stand out where people are going to be more inclined to take care of it, right? Like that they're going to want to take you up on it, that they're like, yes, I want that, is you make it really super sexy in terms of some bonuses or things or some urgency. And again, all of those are really simple things. But back to your initial question, to keep it simple, is just simply nourish your relationships. And I know this might sound like so like newsflash basic, by the way, is you ask people, you invite them to attend, is I'd love for you to come, right? And if you want to bring your staff or your sales team or you want to bring a friend, I'll give you a discount ticket pass for them. Because you're asking other people to help fill your event. One of my favorite event tickets is the 2-for-1, right?
Yes.
For a friend for free, or that early bird bonus, or add a friend for a significantly discounted cost, or hey, groups of 10 or more, you get a discount. Is you get an influencer that maybe is, say, a real estate agent in an office in my world teaching sales, and they're all in sales, and we say, great, and if you bring 10 people from your office or 5 people, rather than coming at this price, all of you can come for this individual price because other people are helping to fill your event. I think that helps in a big way.
Yeah, I like that. I'm glad you brought that one up. So I want to switch gears just a little bit here and get to know a little bit more about the behind the scenes of Tiffany and TiffanySpeaks.com.
Yeah.
I know that you've been doing this for a while and, as you mentioned earlier, you started small and you kept growing. But one thing I know is that every entrepreneur who's achieved anything has also experienced some massive failures, big breakdowns, really big disappointments that they learned and they grew from.
Oh, yeah.
Could you share one with us that was really pivotal for you and helped you become a better entrepreneur and better at the craft that you do?
Yeah, there's several there really are a few you can learn from. Like everything I'm able to say today, it's because I learned through trial and error, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is, oh, wait, I need an email list. What's that? Oh, it worked for me more than just 6 weeks prior to the event, right? Like a lot of it's trial and error is, hey, plan it in advance and, have samplings and all of that. And so some of these are just things that I think I got to learn, the challenging way, if you will. I feel prompted to just share this one that isn't necessarily quote unquote a mistake, but it was a massive lesson and it requires me to get a little vulnerable, which is probably why my heart's like, share that one. And I'm like, let's fix
like, really? Not that one.
I'm all, no, because now my armpits are sweating a little bit and good thing you guys But I think that, so the first year I hosted Elevation, And it was my first year of ever hosting a 2-day event. I had done a couple 1-days that were called Success Strategies Workshops. They're so cute. And oh boy, and all that. And my very first year hosting Elevation, and it was a big change and up level, is I was probably about an hour into day one when on the inside, I started to have like major anxiety go off, right? Like total, just like panic and anxiousness. And, it really just truly, so less than a mistake. It was more just the lesson is that when you commit to the process, and I teach and coach now so regularly, is, hey, you're going to feel fear when you're stretching and growing. And that's really fun to say on a podcast. And that's really fun to say, on a social media post. But here I was living it and really putting myself out there. And I wasn't necessarily prepared for that, and I had a little bit of support. And when we went to break, but I literally started mentally entertaining, like, oh, I'm canceling this. They're coming back from lunch. I'm refunding their money. I'm getting the hell out of here. Right? Because I wasn't prepared as much that, at times, and it's not to say, and I don't always have that experience, but just 3 days ago, I signed my contract for this year's event, and it's a much larger contract because of the space and the people and the audio visual. And it's less about the contract and the money, Mel, as it is about being visible and vulnerable. And that's an entrepreneurial lesson for all of us. And so I think the natural response that at times I've still had to really work on and work through, and sometimes I've done it more gracefully than others, is that when the fear comes up, rather, I want to hide. When the vulnerability rises, I want to hide. And so I think training to that has really helped me. But even, last year there was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so nervous. Why am I doing this? And so I've learned how to build what I call the spiritual first aid kit. Some essential oils and products, and having snacks and healthy foods. And now we tote my blender down to the hotel and in the room where I can, because I don't like to eat a lot of food when I'm speaking and training, but I can drink my nutrition, and to have my crystals and my oils, and my Reiki healer is there. And not that all of you need like a full on like eat trauma team. It's not that, but it's about supporting yourself. Is that just like, anytime you do something outside your comfort zone or you get really visible, you're inviting vulnerability. And I think that's one thing people don't always see about me, is what they see is on stage or social media is like, wow, she's so confident and put together. I say that about you and what I've observed, but in our deeper connecting, what's made our connection so rich is that just getting honest that we're all still working some of that out. Mm-hmm. So it's being aware that fear will likely or discomfort come up for you when you choose to stretch, and not to run from it, but to friend it. Yeah. And to be creative about how can I better support myself as an entrepreneur, as a woman, as a vulnerable teacher, how can I better support myself is a really important lesson that I did learn the hard way. And so whether you call it a mistake or whatnot, I just didn't know what I didn't know until I was standing in that room and I was like, oh my gosh, whoa, this is kind of scary, and I was really freaked out for a little bit.
Yeah. And I appreciate you being so open and vulnerable about that, because we all go into that space, and knowing we're not alone is very healing. So many things I want to ask you, but I know we're running close on time. So I think, what might be a really nice thing for people to learn from you right now is, what is the one thing that you do to help you feel inspired when that fear is trying to take you down? And maybe not in the event space, but just maybe a practice, or maybe there's a quote, or just what is it that you can turn to help you reconnect with the inspiration you need to keep going?
Well, I think if I can I share like 2 or 3 simple things that kind of come together?
Sure.
I'll be short and sweet because I want to be sensitive to time, but I think ultimately I've retrained my brain. Now I still can feel the emotions of fear, so it's logical, but it's a repattern that fear means I'm on the cusp of a breakthrough. Mm-hmm. So my new identification or association is when it comes up, rather than like, I got to get out of here. It's like, okay, whoa, what's coming up? What's this about? And I've gotten curious about the fear. And some of that's just repatterning. And whether you put that on your phone or a 3x5 card, is to get curious and to more, this is about a breakthrough. Fear comes up for 2 reasons: to get us out of danger, right? If we're going to be attacked by some large animal or something. But most often the fear we're feeling today in our human society is that it's a fear of some kind of, am I going to be liked? Am I going to be rejected? How's the tribe going to receive me? Am I doing it right? Am I enough? It's a lot of our primal fears around tribal acceptance is what most of our fear is activated by,
Yes,
right?
I love
How
that.
do I look? How do I sound? Am I doing it right? Am I going to be liked? Am I going to scare anyone off? I've had to work a lot through my own belief and the belief work around, well, if you're too successful, no one will like you or no one will want to be friends with you. And so don't shine too bright and all of that, which is just storytelling anyway. So I think, again, repatterning back to I'm curious about my fear. I friend my fear versus flee from it. You can, flee from it or, friend it or learn from it. And prayer for me is helpful, right? And just connecting to my higher power. And for me, that if fear comes up when I'm ready to speak or
Must be truth. There's thunder in the background.
angel, like, all right. But it's that I go back to a prayer of use me, God, use me. I'm here to be of service, right? That's the servant heart. And that refocuses me and gets me out of myself. Because when fear is often peaked, it's heavily about Tiffany.
Yeah.
And when I can recenter back to, wait, I'm here on this platform or going into this event or this experience to serve. And it takes me, I open back up to being a channel and it like uncorks me for me personally. And then finally is that there are a couple of products in terms of essential oils. There's a few really grounding blends and scents. Your brain, the aromatherapy is just put some oils on and inhale them or on my feet and so forth. So there's things I mentally, spiritually, and physically that help support me through the discomfort when it comes.
Yeah, I love that trifecta of support that you just shared. So I would love to go on and on and on. There's so much extraordinary gifts that you have to share with all of us. But I think what we're going to have to do at this point is share with people where they can learn more from you. As a matter of fact, if you have a resource or you want to share with them where they can go to learn more about your upcoming event, let's just take a minute to share how they can connect with you more.
Yeah. So my favorite free juicy resource place is my YouTube channel. It's just my name, Tiffany Peterson. There's a ton of free videos content from the sales to self-care. The live event Elevation is elevationwithtiffany.com, or my main hub website is tiffanyspeaks.com is where you can find me. But in terms of, for yourself or if you have a sales team, my YouTube channel is really resourceful for a lot of content.
I love that. Thank you. Tiffany, thanks so much for being here today in the middle of your big storm. creates some fun dynamics, and I appreciate the internet staying up in the middle of all of it. But I've been really excited to share you with my community and the people who watch the Power Up podcast. So, hey, thanks for being here today as well. And as you're listening in, I'd love to hear, was there an aha or an insight that's shifted something for you or created some new possibilities? You can head over to melaniebensonstrick.com on the show page there and just look for the interview with Tiffany Peterson and share with us what was a big aha for you. And we'll be back again next week with another juicy insight and strategy around powering up your business from the inside out. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
And thanks again, Tiffany. Bye.
Bye-bye.
What if achieving higher levels of success was more about changing your thoughts than it was about changing your strategies? Hi, it's Melanie Benson Strick, and I've got a quick resource for you. I want to give you a free copy of my new book, Rewired for Wealth. And inside this book, I'm going to teach you what I personally learned about how my thoughts were either sabotaging or setting me up to create success and put it on autopilot. Now, this book is free for a limited time. You can grab it now at rewiredforwealth.com.